looking today at measures that transporting explosive. We've been doing this for the past 2 weeks, and this is the third week in session. We're going to be continuing, and we're going to be looking at measures when transporting explosives. Some measures have been put in place already, but there are an additional 14 that we've been discussing for the past 2 weeks, and we have Mr. John Amoanyi. He's the Acting Chief Inspector of Mines of the Minerals Commission, and he's joining us, sitting down on the table for this discussion. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Amoanyi, which region are you representing?
Upper East.
Upper East.
Yes.
So what's your name?
My name is Naba Amoanyi.
Naba Amoanyi.
Yes.
Oh, welcome then. Right, sir. Mr. Amoanyi, can you recap the measures we've put in place and the conversations we've had for the last couple of weeks before we delve into today's conversation proper?
Okay, thank you very much. Before that explosion at Apiati, but we were thinking that the industrial players, that the explosive dealers, explosive companies, mining companies, they could self-regulate. You see, they have explosive managers, they have competent people. So that was a thinking that they could self-regulate. But after we have now noticed that we need to be involved. Previously, we were doing it periodically, but now we need to involve in all their doings. So we find it appropriate to come out with these 14 additional measures. So for, like, if they want to do some transportation of explosives, you need to notify the Chief Inspector of Mines or the regional manager, so that the regional manager will assign an inspector to be on site to do inspection, verification of the various safety rules and then protocols before the transportation of the explosive. The inspector will also look whether the truck being used for the transportation of explosives is in a good working condition, and also a competent person will be in the transportation of the explosives. The other things we also want to look at is also to ensure that the driver driving the explosive truck is qualified. Has a professional driving license, has gone through some inductions.
Right.
We also want to know the requirements. We have talked about explosive truck. What are the requirements for the explosive truck? Formally, it were not specified, but because of this, we came out with the additional measures. We came out with the requirement for the various trucks that it should have the red flashing lights. It should have the automatic fire suppression system, the tracking system, and then you should have a megaphone to make noise in case there's a danger, and then all those things we came out. We also noticed that if you read the regulation 107 of the LI 2177, what is there is not clearly. So we talk about the escort, whether the escort person should be in the vehicle or the escort person should be in a different vehicle.
Right.
So we also look at that one, and then we said that we should have 2 escorts, 1 leading and making a distance of about 50 meters, 1 also behind. Then we came out of all these things. There should be a code of safe operating procedure for the transportation of explosive. And then we also said that the speed of the escort vehicle should be like the same speed of the explosive truck, which is 60 kilometers per hour. We also mentioned that, and then also was also saying that based on the additional measures, that the production of AMFO is banned, is prohibited. The transportation of AMFO is prohibited once the AMFO can be manufactured on site. So that is what we say. Those ones we can import, that one we will just do the transportation. But those ones we can do it locally. Why not just move to the site and
do
then
it
do the
instead of transporting it? Right, okay.
So we came out with all these things. And that is the additional. That is what I would just say. So what we are urging the public, that they need to also look out to see whether the industrial players are going by the additional measures, the explosive dealers are going by the additional measures. We have just engaged all of them. So it is our hope that the go by the additional measures we put in place.
Okay. Mr. Amoanyi, how often does the Commission conduct an audit of explosive magazines, installations, and the general equipment?
Okay, we for the auditing of this, we need to talk about how explosives are managed. It's very, very important. You need to understand explosives. And then you need to also understand how explosives are managed. So I'll answer your question and also come to the management of explosive itself. You see, for every year, we need to conduct this audit. Conduct auditing of explosive magazines, installations, equipment. We do that one every day. And then we have even planned one in April.
You do it every
year.
Once a year?
Once a year. But periodically, the inspectors also do regular inspections on the explosive magazines, installations, and equipment.
How regular is regular?
Every month they visit the mines.
Okay.
But the yearly one is special one. We
Right.
normally do. That is what we have even planned to do that one in the month of April. So the month of April, we have ruled the dates and then schedule everything, which will be done in the month of April. But before we also do this, we need to know how explosives are managed. It's very, very important, the management of explosives.
What is entailed in the general management of explosives?
Okay. So in the management of explosives, you see, explosives, you need to, first of all, understand explosives. Explosives are dangerous goods, very, very dangerous goods. But without explosives, we can also not mine. There will not be any mining for both surface and underground, the quarries and then all those. So we need explosives. So we need to just think, how can we manage this explosive safely and then at the same time secure? We are talking about safety, that it will not harm us. We are talking about the security. That is, it will not get into the wrong hands so that they will just use the explosives to harm us. So that all those things we need to consider. We also need to know the properties of explosives. First of all, what is explosive? If you say explosive, what is explosive? So any mixture of chemicals that releases gases and heat at high velocity and causing high pressures, that is explosive. And then for this one, you need to know the properties of explosive. What are the properties of explosive? So we are talking about, it can be sensitivity. Sensitivity. If you say sensitivity, so how is explosive can explode? We also talk about the sensitiveness. Sensitiveness means the ability of explosives to propagate a detonation. Right. Yes. And then we talk about the velocity of the detonation. We talk also about the shelf life. If you say shelf life, that is the life expectancy of the explosive. And then you see it has an issue. If the explosive expired, it can detonate at any time. So always need to just look at whether it has reached its expiration date or not. The shelf life. One other thing is we need to also know whether the explosive is oxygen balance. If you say oxygen balance, every explosive material should be oxygen balanced. What we are saying is that the oxidizer and then the fuel oil we use to prepare this one should be balanced. Right. If you have more oxidizer, that is the ammonium nitrate. If you have more ammonium nitrate, if you are preparing like blasting agent, you need ammonium nitrate and then you need the fuel oil. And then it should be at the right composition. So if you prepare it and then the ammonium nitrate, which is the oxidizer, is higher, what it means is that the end results will be you have the nitrous fumes and then very, very dangerous. Right. If it's also the ammonium nitrate is also less, you also have a gas called carbon monoxide. I don't know whether when we were in school we learned those things. Carbon monoxide. Yes. So it is very, very dangerous gas. It's a lighter gas and it's always at your height level. And then when it gets to your bloodstream, what it does is that it absorbs the oxygen in your bloodstream. And at a particular concentration, you will die. And then you will not feel, because the properties of the carbon monoxide, it is tasteless, colorless, you cannot see, you cannot. So when we have carbon monoxide here, you will not even feel. You will not feel carbon monoxide. So by the time you realize, you're almost gone. Right. Yes. So that is what I would just say about. So we need to know the properties before we can manage how to manage and then in the management of explosives, we are talking about how explosives are conveyed or the transportation of how explosives are used, how explosives are handled, how explosives are stored. So these are the things we are talking about. So we need to manage all these things very well, right, so that we don't get accidental detonation.
Right. So, Mr. Amoanyi, while we are talking about professionals and how to properly safeguard these explosives when you are transporting them, do we have any additional measures that are going to be put in place for the people who actually live in these mining communities? For instance, what happened at Apiate? If maybe the people had been sensitized that if a truck carrying explosive is on its way via here, do not use the same route. Are there any measures that have been put in place for the people in the mining communities themselves to be aware and have certain red flags and know that this is a red flag and this is a red flag?
Okay. So thank you very much. You see, if you look at the additional measures, we have one of them, you have to prepare safe operating procedure. You prepare safe operating procedure, and then that one should be along the public road, because the explosives, you use explosives, you transport explosives through the public road from one mine to another mine through the public road. So what it means is that the safe operating procedure should take care of all these things. You need to do risk assessment along the public road to ensure that maybe a particular town is a market day. So in this case, you will not even transport these explosives. Listen, formerly we were not doing it. So for now, what we are just urging the mining companies is that they need to. They were doing the sensitization in their own locality. But they were not thinking that the explosives will be traveling from one community to another community.
Towns,
So now you are doing it in your own locality. Now you need to extend wherever the truck passes. You need to just do sensitization alongside. So that one will capture in their safe operating procedures.
Right, Mr. Amoanyi, now what are the requirements or the level of competencies for personnel who man explosives?
Okay. So for this one, I just want to quote from the regulation. If you look at the regulation 6 of LI 2177, I just want to read. If you read the sub-regulation 1, that is 6.1, it says, a holder of a mineral right in relation to which explosives are used, and the manager shall, in relation to the use of explosives, and at that manager's control, appoint a person with a valid explosives manager certificate as explosives manager. So before you can even operate or deal in explosives, you should appoint a qualified, a valid person who holds explosive certificate of competency to be the manager. If you read the 2, it says a manager shall ensure that activities that involve explosives, accessories, or precursor substances are A, managed by a certified explosives manager, and then B, carried out only by competent and certified person. If you say competent and certified person, a person with explosive certificate of competency, that person can conduct blasting in underground, blasting on surface, and then also can handle explosives. And then, the C, carried out only if the licenses and permits required are in place. So before you can just do all these things, you need to ensure that you have all the licenses, you have all the permits before you can just deal in these explosives. And then the last thing, one last thing we need to also remind us is that the appointment of the competent persons does not relieve the holder of the mineral, the owner of the explosive company. Even though you appoint all these things, you also need to, you cannot be relieved of any personal responsibilities under these regulations. So if you look at this one, in a nutshell, those people involved, you need to have a person with explosive certificate of competency. And then you should also have a person with explosives manager certificate of competency. And then you also have a person with a safety, because if you read the regulation 49, it says you need to appoint safety officer. Yeah. So there should also be a safety officer to ensure that the PPEs and other safety measures are also in place and then it's also complied with.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Amoanyi. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm sure we'll see you again because there's more to discuss.
Thank you very much.
Any final words you want to before we wrap up?
What I would say is that the management of explosives, we need to be very careful. We need to appoint right people to do the management of explosives as spelled out in the regulations. Right. And then there's other aspect of the regulation. If you look at the same regulation 2015, all this regulation talk about the competent, the explosive manager, and then a person who with a certificate of competency.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Amoanyi. Mr. John Amoanyi is the acting Chief Inspector of Mines of the Minerals Commission, and we've been having a sit down with the Minerals Commission talking about measures at transporting explosives, and there are 14 new additional measures and safety protocols that have been established to deal with safe transportation of mining explosives. The hashtag